The grand hall of the Imperial Throne World sparkled with lights from 1,000 different stars. Captain Jiwoo Park stood among the human delegation, trying not to look as nervous as he felt. His dress uniform was crisp and clean, but he felt small in this massive room filled with alien species he had only seen in training videos. Earth had finally been invited to join the Galactic Council after 50 years of proving they were not a threat. Jiwoo was chosen to lead the first diplomatic mission because he was calm under pressure and could speak well. At least that was what his superiors told him. Right now, he felt like a child at an adult's party. Remember, do not make eye contact with the higher species, Ambassador Eunji Choi whispered beside him. She was a stern woman in her 50s who had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. Especially not the Sylvanthi. They consider it aggressive. Jiwoo nodded, keeping his eyes down. Around them, hundreds of alien dignitaries moved through the hall. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others floated, crawled, or moved in ways that hurt to watch. The air smelled of exotic perfumes and strange chemicals that made his nose itch. Then the music stopped. Every being in the hall turned toward the massive doors at the far end. They opened slowly, and she entered, Queen Valara of the Sylvanthi Empire. Jiwoo forgot to breathe. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that glowed like moonlight. Her features were sharp and perfect, as if carved from crystal. Her eyes were the most stunning part. They looked like tiny galaxies spinning with purple and blue light. Her long hair floated around her head as if she was underwater, shimmering with colors that changed as she moved. She wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid silver, and a crown of what looked like frozen starlight sat on her head. Every step she took was graceful and powerful. The other aliens bowed low as she passed. Even the proudest species lowered their heads. Jiwoo stared. He could not help it. In all his life, he had never seen anything so beautiful. Queen Valara moved through the crowd like a distant star, cold and unreachable. Her face showed no emotion. The Sylvanthi were known for their lack of feelings. They had evolved past emotions millions of years ago, or so they claimed. They saw feelings as weaknesses that primitive species had not yet overcome. The Queen's path brought her closer to the human delegation. Ambassador Eunji grabbed Jiwoo's arm hard. "Bow," she hissed. "Now." The humans bowed deeply. Jiwoo bent at the waist, but his eyes betrayed him. He looked up just for a moment and found himself staring directly into Queen Valara's galactic eyes. Time seemed to stop. The massive hall went silent. Every alien held their breath. The Queen stopped walking. She turned her full attention to Jiwoo. Her expression remained neutral, but something flickered in those cosmic eyes. Curiosity, perhaps, or annoyance. "Why are you looking at me, human?" Her voice was like music played on crystal bells. It echoed through the hall, reaching every corner. Ambassador Eunji made a small choking sound. Lieutenant Minho Kim, standing behind Jiwoo, grabbed his shoulder as if to pull him back. Everyone waited for Jiwoo to apologize, to beg forgiveness for his disrespect. But Jiwoo had spent his whole career being honest. It was why people trusted him. It was why he was good at his job. And in that moment, with hundreds of alien eyes watching him, he decided to tell the truth. "Because you're beautiful," he said simply. The silence that followed was so complete that Jiwoo could hear his own heartbeat. Ambassador Eunji looked like she might faint. Minho's grip on his shoulder tightened until it hurt. Queen Valara stared at him. Her glowing skin flickered, changing from cool silver to a warmer gold color. Her eyes widened slightly, the galaxies within them spinning faster. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, something impossible happened. The corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile, but almost. A crack in the perfect emotionless mask. "Interesting," she said softly. She looked at her chief advisor, a tall Sylvanthi male with dark blue skin and cold eyes. "Lord Thane, add the human delegation to my private council meeting tomorrow. I wish to learn more about this species that speaks so directly." Lord Thane's face showed the first emotion Jiwoo had seen from any Sylvanthi. Shock, and perhaps anger. "Your Majesty, that is most irregular. The humans have not yet been fully evaluated for I have made my decision." The Queen's voice was gentle but firm. She looked back at Jiwoo. "What is your name, human?" "Captain Jiwoo Park, Your Majesty." "Captain Jiwoo Park," she repeated as if tasting the words. "Tomorrow, then. I am curious to see if your honesty extends beyond simple observations. She moved on, leaving the human delegation standing frozen in place. The moment she was far enough away, the hall erupted in whispers. Aliens turned to stare at the humans with new interest. Some looked excited. Others looked hostile. Ambassador Yunji pulled Jiwoo aside roughly. "What were you thinking?" she demanded in Korean, her face red with anger and fear. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" No one speaks to the Sylvanthi Queen that way. No one calls her beautiful. They don't even have concepts of beauty anymore. "I spoke the truth," Jiwoo said quietly. "Isn't that what we are supposed to do? Show them that humans are honest and trustworthy?" "There is honest and there is suicidal," Minho muttered, but there was a hint of respect in his voice. "That was one hell of a first impression, Captain." The rest of the reception passed in a blur. Alien ambassadors approached the humans with new curiosity. Some asked questions about Earth. Others simply stared as if trying to figure out what made humans so strange and bold. Through it all, Jiwoo could feel eyes on him. When he looked across the Great Hall, he saw Queen Valara standing on a balcony far above. Even from that distance, he could see her looking down at him. Her skin glowed brighter than before, cycling through colors he had no names for. As the humans finally left the hall hours later, Jiwoo wondered what he had started. He had come to the Galactic Council to represent humanity with dignity and respect. Instead, he had managed to fascinate the most powerful ruler in the known galaxy with just 6 simple words. Tomorrow's meeting would either be the beginning of something extraordinary or the end of his diplomatic career, possibly both. Outside, the alien city stretched to the horizon under 3 moons. Jiwoo looked up at the stars and thought about galactic eyes and glowing skin. He thought about a queen who had forgotten how to feel, and a simple truth spoken in a moment of wonder. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. The next morning arrived too quickly for Jiwoo's comfort. He stood outside the Queen's private council chamber with Ambassador Yunji and Lieutenant Minho. The hallway was made of some kind of crystal that showed swirling nebulas inside it. "Beautiful but cold." "Let me do the talking," Yunji said for the 10th time. "You have done enough damage already." Before Jiwoo could respond, the massive doors opened silently. A Sylvanthi guard gestured for them to enter. The 3 humans walked into a circular room with a high ceiling that seemed to show real space above them. Stars twinkled and moved in patterns that made Jiwoo dizzy if he looked too long. Queen Valara sat on a throne that appeared to be made of solid light. Around her stood her advisors, including Lord Thane, who looked at the humans like they were insects he wanted to step on. Several other alien species were present too, all members of the Galactic Council's inner circle. "Captain Park," the Queen said, and her skin shifted to a warm amber color. "You and your companions may sit." Chairs rose from the floor, which startled the humans, but they sat without comment. Jiwoo noticed that the Queen's eyes were fixed on him, while her advisors stared with obvious disapproval. "We have gathered to discuss the human application for full council membership," Lord Thane said, his voice like ice. "Before we can approve this request, all new species must pass the Strategic Response Evaluation. It is a test to ensure that your species can contribute meaningfully to galactic defense and problem-solving." "We understand," Yunji said carefully. "Earth has prepared for this evaluation. We are ready." "Good." Lord Thane waved his hand, and a holographic display filled the center of the room. It showed a star system with multiple planets, fleets of ships, and what looked like an approaching enemy force. "You will be given a tactical scenario. You must develop a solution that minimizes casualties and resources while achieving victory. Every species that joins the Council must pass this test." Jiwoo studied the display carefully. The scenario was complex. The enemy fleet was larger and better armed. The defending forces had to protect civilian populations on 3 planets while somehow defeating the invaders. It looked impossible. "The optimal solution has been calculated by our best strategists," one of the alien advisors said. "We will compare your human approach to the established correct answer." "You have 1 hour." The humans huddled together, speaking in low voices. Yunji wanted to consult the military database they had brought. Minho suggested trying to match what he thought the aliens expected. But Jiwoo looked at the scenario differently. "This is wrong," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" Yunji asked. "The correct answer. They keep mentioning it, but in real war there is no single correct answer. Every situation is different. Every choice has costs." Jiwoo stood and approached the holographic display, studying it from all angles. Your time is running. Captain, Lord Thane said with satisfaction in his voice. Jiwoo ignored him. He walked around the display, his mind racing. The enemy fleet was strong, yes, but they were moving in perfect formation, following what looked like optimal tactical doctrine. They were predictable, just like this test probably expected humans to be predictable too. I have a solution, Jiwoo said after 20 minutes. The aliens looked surprised. Most species took the full hour. Lord Thane gestured for him to continue. First, I would not defend all 3 planets at once, Jiwoo said. I would evacuate 2 of them completely and make it obvious that I was doing so. The enemy would see an opportunity and split their forces to capture the abandoned worlds quickly. You would abandon civilians? One alien asked, shocked. No, I said evacuate them. Move them to the 3rd planet, the one with the best defenses. Make the enemy think we are weak and desperate. Jiwoo manipulated the hologram, showing ships moving. While they split up to take the empty planets, our fleet would attack their supply lines here. He pointed to the enemy's rear position. But their fleet is superior, Lord Thane objected. Direct engagement is illogical. Direct engagement, yes. But I would not fight fair. Jiwoo grinned. I would use the asteroid field here to hide ships. When the enemy divides, I would strike fast at their weakest group, destroy them, then retreat before the others could respond. Hit and run, over and over. That is dishonorable, one of the aliens said. That is survival, Jiwoo replied. While doing this, I would also send a small team to board the enemy flagship during the chaos. Not to fight, but to broadcast a message from their own ship telling the other enemy vessels that they are ordered to retreat. Confusion is a weapon, the room fell silent. The aliens looked at each other with what might have been confusion or concern. Queen Valara leaned forward, her eyes bright. And if the enemy does not fall for your deceptions, she asked, then I would load the evacuated planets with explosives and debris launchers. When the enemy lands to claim them, I would trigger everything remotely, turn the planets into traps, use their greed against them. Jiwoo crossed his arms. I would make taking those worlds so costly that they would have to choose between revenge and survival. Most species choose survival. Lord Thane looked angry now. This is not warfare. This is chaos, trickery. You fight without honor, without logic. You sacrifice military advantage for psychological games. Yes, Jiwoo said simply, because the enemy in your scenario is thinking logically. They are following doctrine. But humans learned long ago that the most dangerous opponent is not the strongest or the smartest. It is the one who refuses to play by the rules you expect. Queen Valara stood from her throne. Her skin was now a brilliant gold color, almost glowing. Lord Thane, what was the Council's approved solution to this scenario? Lord Thane hesitated. We calculated that defending one planet with maximum force while sacrificing the other 2 was optimal. Estimated casualties, 2.3 billion civilians. Enemy fleet defeated within 6 months. And Captain Park's solution? It is unpredictable. We cannot calculate its success rate because it relies on factors we do not normally include in tactical assessments. Psychological warfare, deception, unconventional thinking. Lord Thane looked uncomfortable. If it worked, casualties would be minimal. If it failed, the outcome could be catastrophic. So it is either much better or much worse than the safe answer, the Queen said. That is very human, is it not? To take risks that we would never consider. She turned to face the other council members. 300 years ago, when the Hive invaded our space, we fought them logically. We calculated optimal responses. We lost 30 star systems before we stopped them. Perhaps if we had thought like this human, we would have lost none. Your Majesty, Lord Thane said urgently, surely you do not approve of this chaos? I approve of results, Lord Thane, and I approve of species that bring new perspectives to old problems. Queen Valara looked directly at Jiwoo. The humans passed the strategic response evaluation. They will be granted full council membership. The other aliens erupted in protests and arguments. Some agreed with the Queen. Others called the decision reckless. Through it all, Queen Valara remained calm, but her skin continued to glow brighter. As the meeting dissolved into chaos, she approached Jiwoo directly. The other humans and aliens backed away, giving them space. You think differently than any species I have encountered, she said softly. You embrace uncertainty. You use emotion as a tool. We Sylvanthi spent millions of years eliminating such things from our culture. We pride ourselves on logic and control. And yet you seem curious about it, Jiwoo observed. I am. Her eyes met his. Tonight there is a gathering in the royal gardens. I would like you to attend, alone. We will discuss your human way of thinking further. Is that appropriate, Your Majesty? For the first time, Jiwoo saw something that might have been a smile on her crystal features. No, it is highly inappropriate. That is what makes it interesting. She swept out of the room, leaving Jiwoo standing in the chaos she had created. Minyo grabbed his shoulder. Captain, I think you just started a revolution, he said, half laughing, half terrified. Jiwoo watched the queen disappear through the doors. Her words echoed in his mind. She wanted to understand human thinking. She wanted to talk alone. The most powerful being in the galaxy was curious about a simple human captain from Earth. What had he gotten himself into? The royal gardens were unlike anything Jiwoo had imagined. Plants from 1,000 worlds grew together in impossible harmony. Some glowed softly in the darkness. Others sang quiet melodies when the wind touched them. Water flowed upward in some places, defying gravity. The air smelled of flowers that Earth had no names for. Jiwoo walked alone down a path made of smooth stones that lit up under his feet. He had left Minho and Yoonji at the human quarters despite their protests. The queen had asked him to come alone, and something told him this was important. He found her standing beside a pond where the water was perfectly still, reflecting 3 moons above. She wore simpler clothes than before, just a flowing white gown that seemed to be made of silk and starlight. Her hair was down, floating gently around her shoulders. Without her crown and formal robes, she looked less like an untouchable queen and more like a person. Captain Park, she said without turning around. You came. You asked me to, Your Majesty. Valara, she said. Here in this place you may call me Valara. We are not in the throne room now. Jiwoo approached carefully, stopping a respectful distance away. Then I am Jiwoo. She turned to look at him, and her skin was a soft purple color like twilight. Tell me, Jiwoo, what did you feel when you first saw me yesterday? The question surprised him. I felt wonder, awe. You are the most beautiful being I have ever seen. I said so because it was true. Beautiful. She repeated the word as if it was foreign. We do not use this word often. The Sylvanthi eliminated concepts of beauty from our culture 70,000 years ago. We decided such things were distractions, primitive responses to visual stimuli that served no logical purpose. That sounds lonely, Jiwoo said quietly. Valara's eyes widened slightly. Lonely, another word we rarely use. You humans use so many words for feelings. Joy, sadness, love, hate, wonder, despair, we find it excessive. Feelings are not excessive. They are what make life worth living. She gestured to a bench near the pond. They sat together, and Jiwoo tried not to think about how strange this was. A human captain and an alien queen, sitting in a garden talking about emotions like old friends. Tell me about human feelings, Valara said. I have read your species files, but reading data and understanding are different things. Why do humans value emotions so highly? You know they cloud judgment. You know they cause pain, yet you embrace them. Jiwoo thought about how to explain. Imagine living in a world without color. Everything is gray, logical, safe. You would survive, but would you truly live? Emotions are our colors. Yes, they can be painful. Sadness hurts. Fear paralyzes. Anger destroys. But joy makes us soar. Love gives us purpose. Hope lets us dream of better tomorrows. And these are worth the pain, always. Jiwoo picked up a small stone and tossed it into the pond. Ripples spread across the perfect reflection. Let me tell you a story. When I was young, my mother became very sick. The doctors said she would not survive. Logic said we should prepare for her death, but my father refused to accept it. He stayed by her side every day. He talked to her, played her favorite music, told her about his day even when she could not respond. He had hope even when hope was illogical. Did she survive? Valara asked softly. Yes, against all odds she recovered. The doctors called it a miracle. My father called it love. Jiwoo smiled at the memory. He told me that hope and love are the most illogical and most powerful forces in the universe. They make us fight when fighting is pointless. They make us care when caring brings pain. They make us human. Valara was quiet for a long time. Her skin shifted through several colors, settling on a deep blue. We Sylvanthi once had such feelings. Millions of years ago, before we achieved our great awakening. We had love, fear, joy, all of it. But we also had war, hatred, jealousy. Our emotions nearly destroyed us. So you eliminated them all? The good with the bad? We thought we were evolving beyond primitive needs. We thought logic would make us perfect. She looked down at her hands. But lately I have wondered if we simply made ourselves empty. We do not hurt, but we do not celebrate. We do not fear, but we do not hope. We exist efficiently, but do we truly live? Jiwoo saw something in her eyes then. A deep loneliness that she probably did not even have words for. She was a queen of an empire spanning 1,000 worlds, surrounded by millions of her people, and she was completely alone. Is that why you are interested in humans? He asked. Because we remind you of what you lost? Perhaps. She turned to face him fully. When you looked at me yesterday and said I was beautiful, I felt something. Just for a moment. A warmth inside my chest. A flutter in my thoughts. I did not understand it, but I wanted to feel it again. That is why I asked you here. I want to understand what you awakened in me. I think what you felt was happiness, Jiwoo said gently. A compliment made you happy. That is a very normal emotion. For you, perhaps. For me, it is unprecedented. Her voice held a note of fear. Lord Thane believes I am being corrupted by human contact. He says emotions will make me weak, unfit to rule. Other advisors agree. Do you feel weak? No. Valara stood and walked to the edge of the pond. I feel more alive than I have in my entire existence. It terrifies me, and I find that I want more of it. Is that not irrational? Jiwoo joined her at the water's edge. Maybe. But the best parts of life usually are. They stood in silence for a while, watching the moonlight dance on the water. Jiwoo could feel the weight of the moment. This was not just a conversation between two people. It was a bridge being built between two completely different ways of seeing the universe. There is something you should know, Valara said suddenly. The Galactic Council has detected something at the edge of our galaxy. An ancient threat that has been dormant for millions of years. It appears to be awakening. What kind of threat? Machines. Weapons from a civilization that existed before any of our species. They destroyed their creators and went dormant. Now they are active again, and they follow only one directive: eliminate all biological life. Valara's skin turned a dark gray, the first time Jiwoo had seen such a color on her. The council will meet in 3 days to decide our response. I wanted you to know because I fear we will need human thinking to survive this. You want us to be illogical in the face of extinction? Jiwoo tried to smile, but the news was chilling. I want you to give us hope when logic says there is none. I want you to show us how to fight with passion instead of just calculation. She looked at him with those galactic eyes. Most of all, I want to learn how to feel again before it is too late. If we are to face extinction, I do not want to face it as an empty shell. I want to face it as something more. Jiwoo understood then. She was not just curious about humans. She was desperate. She had spent her whole life being what her people expected her to be, and now she wanted something different. She wanted to be alive in a way the Sylvanthi had forgotten how to be. I will help you, he promised, but I need to warn you. Once you start feeling things, you cannot easily stop. Emotions are not something you can control like a machine. They are wild and unpredictable. Good, Valara said, and this time she definitely smiled. It was small and uncertain, but it was real. I have been controlled and predictable for 300 years. I am ready to try something different. As Jiwoo walked back through the gardens later that night, he looked up at the alien stars and wondered what he had just agreed to. Teaching an emotionless queen how to feel, while an ancient horror awakened at the galaxy's edge. His mother had been right all those years ago. Love and hope really were the most illogical forces in the universe, and right now the galaxy was going to need all the illogical help it could get. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaos from the moment it began. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the great chamber, all talking at once. Fear hung in the air like smoke. Jiwoo stood with the human delegation near the back. Minho looked grim, and even Ambassador Eunji had lost her usual composure. Above them, a massive holographic display showed the threat in terrible detail. 3 entire star systems had gone dark. No signals, no survivors, just empty space where billions of beings had lived days before. And moving through that emptiness was something that made Jiwoo's blood run cold. The machines were massive, each one the size of a small moon. They moved in perfect geometric formations, thousands of them like a swarm of mechanical locusts. Ancient weapons from a dead civilization, now awakened and following their original programming. Destroy all biological life. They are heading toward the core worlds, Lord Thane announced from the central platform. His voice was steady, but Jiwoo could see tension in how he held himself. At current speed, they will reach the first inhabited systems in 14 days. We have gathered to determine our response. Evacuation, one alien ambassador shouted. We must evacuate the outer colonies and consolidate our defenses at the core. Agreed, another voice called. Sacrifice the few to save the many. It is logical. How many is the few? Jiwoo found himself asking, his voice carrying across the chamber. Heads turned to look at him. How many billions of lives are acceptable losses? Captain Park, Lord Thane said coldly. You humans have been council members for only 3 days. Perhaps you should listen before speaking. 3 days or 3 centuries, lives are lives. Jiwoo stepped forward, ignoring Yoonji's attempt to grab his arm. You are talking about abandoning entire worlds. Those are not numbers in a calculation. They are people, families, children. Emotional thinking, an alien counselor said with disgust. This is precisely why the Sylvanthi eliminated such responses. Fear and sentiment cloud judgment. And cold logic makes you cowards, Jiwoo shot back. The chamber erupted in angry shouts. Enough. Queen Valara's voice cut through the noise like a blade. She had been silent until now, sitting on her throne and observing, but now she stood and her presence demanded attention. Captain Park speaks harshly but not without merit. We are proposing to sacrifice 47 worlds. That is not a small number. That is not an acceptable loss. Your Majesty, Lord Thane said urgently, the calculations are clear. We cannot defend every world. The machines outnumber us. They have technology we do not understand. The logical course is to establish a defensive perimeter and hold it. I am aware of the calculations. Lord Thane, I am also aware that following pure logic against an enemy that thinks in pure logic is foolish. Valara's skin shifted to a bright silver, almost aggressive. We need a different approach. The human approach? Lord Thane's voice dripped with disdain. Chaos and emotion? That will save us? Maybe it will, Valara said firmly, because everything we have tried against this enemy has failed. Every logical tactical response has been anticipated and countered. The machines think like we do. They calculate optimal responses. They are us, but made of metal instead of flesh. Jiwoo saw his opening. Exactly. Which is why you need someone who thinks differently. The machines can predict logic. They cannot predict human unpredictability. Ridiculous, an alien counselor muttered, is it? Jiwoo pulled up his data pad and connected it to the central display. Let me show you something. This is Earth's history, specifically battles where the weaker side won against impossible odds. Images flashed across the display. Ancient human battles, naval warfare, resistance movements, times when small forces defeated massive armies through courage, creativity, and refusing to follow the expected playbook. These victories should not have happened, Jiwoo explained. Logically, these forces should have lost. But they won because they did the unexpected. They fought with passion, not just planning. They refused to accept defeat even when defeat was logical. Ancient history, Lord Thane dismissed. Primitive warfare has no relevance here. It has every relevance. Jiwoo zoomed the display to show the machine formations. Look at how they move. Perfect geometry. Optimal positioning. They are following tactical doctrine that is millions of years old. They are predictable because they are perfect. And perfect means inflexible. Queen Valara was watching him intently now, her eyes bright. What are you proposing, Captain? I am proposing that we stop thinking like them. Stop calculating acceptable losses. Stop retreating to defend the core while sacrificing the outer worlds. Jiwoo stood straighter. I propose we attack. The chamber exploded in disbelief and anger. Counselors shouted that it was suicide, that humans were insane. That emotion had finally proven itself to be lethal foolishness. Attack with what? Lord Thane demanded. They outnumber our fleets 3-1. Their technology is superior. Attacking is certain death. Maybe, Jiwoo admitted. Or maybe they will not expect it because no logical species would do it. Maybe attacking when we should retreat will confuse their calculations enough to create an opening. And if you are wrong, an alien asked, then we die fighting instead of running. At least then we die trying to save everyone, not just the ones the math says are worth saving. Silence fell over the chamber. Jiwoo could feel hundreds of eyes on him, judging him, weighing his words against their fear. Queen Valara spoke into the quiet. I support this plan. The chamber erupted again. Counselors shouted at the queen. They called her compromised. They said human emotion had corrupted her judgment. Lord Thane looked like he wanted to scream. "Your Majesty, please," he begged. "You are not thinking clearly. This human has infected you with his dangerous ideas. You are the Sylvanthi Queen. You are supposed to be beyond such influence." "Perhaps I am tired of being beyond influence," Valara said, and Jiwoo heard real emotion in her voice now. Anger, determination. Things a Sylvanthi Queen was not supposed to feel. For 300 years I have ruled with perfect logic. I have made every decision based on calculations and probability. And where has it gotten us? 3 star systems dead, 47 more marked for sacrifice, billions of people we are preparing to abandon. She descended from her throne, walking to the center of the chamber. Captain Park is right. We cannot defeat this enemy by thinking like them. We need something they cannot calculate. We need the human element. "This is madness," Lord Thane said, but Jiwoo could hear desperation in his voice now. "You are risking everything on the whims of emotion." "No, Lord Thane, I am risking everything on hope. On the belief that sometimes the illogical choice is the right one." Valara turned to face all the assembled counselors. "I am ordering the Sylvanthi fleet to prepare for offensive operations. Any species that wishes to join us may do so. Any species that wishes to retreat may do so. But I will not abandon 47 worlds without trying to save them. Your advisors will not allow this," Lord Thane said desperately. "The Council of Elders will remove you from the throne for emotional corruption. Then let them try." Valara's skin blazed bright gold now, almost blinding. "I have been the perfect emotionless queen for long enough. If caring about the lives of my subjects is corruption, then I choose corruption. If hope is weakness, then I choose weakness. And if the Council of Elders disapproves, they are welcome to challenge me directly." The threat hung in the air. No one had challenged a reigning Sylvanthi monarch in over 10,000 years. It simply was not done. But the way Valara stood now, fierce and certain, made it clear she was serious. Slowly, other counselors began to speak. Some supported the queen. Others joined her plan. The humans were not the only ones tired of cold logic and acceptable sacrifices. Some species still remembered what it was like to fight for more than just optimal outcomes. By the end of the session, 13 species had committed their fleets to the offensive. It was not enough to match the machine's numbers, but it was enough to try. As the chamber emptied, Jiwoo found himself face to face with Queen Valara. Lord Thane and the other Sylvanthi advisors stood nearby, watching with obvious disapproval. "You have started a revolution, Captain Park," she said softly. "I hope you are ready for what comes next. Are you?" Jiwoo asked, equally quiet. "No," she admitted. "I am terrified, excited, angry, hopeful, all at once. Is this what emotions feel like?" "Welcome to being alive," Jiwoo said with a small smile. Valara looked at him for a long moment. Then, in a gesture that shocked every Sylvanthi in the room, she reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder. A simple touch, the kind of contact her people had not shared in millennia. "Thank you," she said, "for reminding me that survival without purpose is not living." As she walked away, surrounded by her scandalized advisors, Jiwoo felt the weight of what they had started. An ancient enemy, a divided council, a queen learning to feel, and humanity once again, refusing to accept the logical answer. The galaxy was about to learn why humans were dangerous, not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they were the most stubborn, hopeful, irrational species in existence, and sometimes that was exactly what the universe needed. The war room buzzed with nervous energy. Holographic displays showed fleet positions, enemy movements, and tactical projections. Jiwoo stood at the center table, surrounded by military commanders from a dozen different species. Admiral Taeyang Song, Earth's most decorated officer, stood beside him looking skeptical. "This plan is insane," Admiral Taeyang said bluntly, crossing his arms. "You want us to do what exactly?" "Stop fighting like machines," Jiwoo replied. "The enemy expects optimal tactics, perfect formations, calculated responses. We need to give them chaos instead." A Sylvanthi admiral shook his head. "Chaos is not a strategy, Captain Park. It is a failure to plan. No, chaos is what happens when you embrace unpredictability as a weapon." Jiwoo pulled up a tactical display. "Look at how the machines fight. They move in geometric patterns. They optimize for efficiency. They calculate every variable and choose the mathematically best response. It makes them strong, but it also makes them rigid. And you think being unpredictable will defeat them? Another alien commander looked doubtful. I think being human will defeat them, Jiwoo corrected. Let me show you what I mean. He spent the next hour explaining his plan. The alien commanders listened with growing confusion and horror. What Jiwoo proposed went against every military doctrine they knew. It was wasteful, inefficient. It relied on individual initiative instead of central command. It asked soldiers to trust their instincts over their training. It was, in short, completely human. You are asking warriors to improvise, one commander said, to make decisions based on feeling instead of data. That is how wars are lost. That is how humans win wars, Admiral Taeyang corrected, surprising Jiwoo. The older man stepped forward. I did not believe in this approach at first either, but I have studied human military history. Every time we faced superior enemies, we won by refusing to fight the way they expected. We won by being creative, stubborn, and sometimes stupid. We won by being human. Minho, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Think of it this way. The machines are playing chess. They see every move 50 steps ahead. They cannot be beaten at chess. So we stop playing chess. We flip the board over and play something else entirely. But how do we teach this to our warriors? A Sylvanthi officer asked. How do we make them think this way? We show them, Jiwoo said. Starting now. Over the next week, something unprecedented happened. Human officers moved through the combined fleet, training alien warriors in what they called the human doctrine. It was not really doctrine at all. It was a way of thinking. Jiwoo found himself in training rooms across a dozen ships, demonstrating concepts that the aliens struggled to understand. He brought in Ji-hoon Lee, Earth's best xenobiologist, to explain human psychology. He brought in Yuna Oh, a brilliant young engineer who specialized in making impossible things work through creativity and luck. He brought in Suman Han, Earth's security chief, who taught the value of gut instincts. Trust your feelings, Jiwoo told a group of Sylvanthi pilots. They sat in rows, staring at him like he was speaking nonsense. I know you have been trained to ignore feelings. But feelings are data too. Fear tells you something is wrong. Excitement tells you to take a chance. Anger gives you strength when you need it. But feelings are unreliable, one pilot protested. So is everything else in combat, Jiwoo replied. You think calculations will save you when the enemy does something unexpected? When your sensors fail? When the plan falls apart? In those moments, feelings are all you have. Learn to use them. The training was hard. Aliens who had spent their lives following orders struggled with the concept of making independent decisions. They wanted clear instructions. They wanted optimal responses. Giving them freedom felt like abandonment to many. But slowly things began to change. A Sylvanthi pilot named Kira completed a simulation by doing something completely unplanned, and she laughed when it worked. Laughter from a Sylvanthi. Her instructors did not know whether to be proud or horrified. A warrior from the Xanthi species broke formation during a drill to save a wingman who was in trouble, sacrificing optimal positioning for loyalty. His commander shouted at him, then stopped and realized the lesson had just been taught perfectly. Through it all, Queen Valara watched. She spent hours observing the training, studying how humans approached problems. Jiwoo caught her in the pilot training center one evening, sitting alone in the observation deck. Learning anything? He asked, sitting beside her. Everything, she replied. Her skin was a deep purple. The color he had learned meant she was thinking deeply. I am watching my people change. They are learning to smile, to argue, to trust themselves instead of just their training. It is beautiful and terrifying. Change always is. Some of my advisors are calling for my removal, Valara said quietly. They say I have corrupted the fleet. They say emotions will make us weak when we face the enemy. What do you think? She was quiet for a moment. I think I felt joy for the first time in my life yesterday. One of my pilots made a joke during briefing. A joke, Sylvanthi do not joke. But he did, and I laughed. It was such a small thing, but it felt like discovering a new star. You are becoming who you were supposed to be, Jiwoo said, or I am destroying who I was supposed to be. I do not know which. She turned to look at him. Are you ever afraid that you are wrong? That emotions will be our downfall instead of our salvation? Every day, Jiwoo admitted. But I'm also afraid of living without feeling anything, of surviving but not truly being alive. If we defeat the machines but lose what makes us who we are, then what have we really won? Valara reached out, and this time she took his hand. Her skin was warm and smooth, and Jiwoo felt electricity at the contact. "Promise me something," she said. "If I fall too far into emotion, if I lose the logic that has guided my people for so long, help me find balance." "Only if you promise to do the same for me," Jiwoo replied. "If I become too reckless, too driven by feeling, remind me that logic has value too." "Deal." She squeezed his hand gently. "I am glad you looked at me that day in the throne room. I am glad you were honest. You have given me something I did not know I was missing." "What is that?" "Hope." The word hung between them like a promise. Outside the observation window, the combined fleet moved in formation. Thousands of ships from dozens of species. In a few days they would face an enemy that should be unbeatable. Logic said they would fail. Mathematics predicted their defeat. But humans had never been good at accepting what mathematics predicted. The final briefing came too soon. The entire command staff assembled in the flagship's main hall. Queen Valara stood at the center, and Jiwoo noticed immediately that she looked different. She stood straighter. Her skin cycled through colors, showing emotion openly instead of hiding it. She was learning to be alive. "In 6 hours we will engage the enemy," she announced. "We are outnumbered. We are outgunned. Every calculation says we should lose. Every logical projection predicts our defeat." She paused, and a small smile crossed her crystal features. "Good. Let us make them think we will behave logically. Let us make them calculate their victory. And then let us show them what happens when you fight against species who refuse to be predicted." The warriors cheered. It started with the humans, but it spread. Species that had never cheered before found themselves shouting. They were not celebrating victory. They were celebrating the chance to fight for something more than just optimal outcomes. They were celebrating hope, even when hope was illogical. Jiwoo found Admiral Taiyang before they returned to their ships. The older man clasped his shoulder firmly. "If we survive this, I am recommending you for promotion," Taiyang said. "If we do not survive, I want you to know you have done humanity proud. You reminded the galaxy what makes us special." "What is that, sir?" "We give a damn even when we should not. We care even when caring is stupid. We hope even when hope is impossible." Taeyang smiled. "That is humanity, fuck yeah, Captain. That is what makes us human." As Jiwoo walked to his ship, he thought about those words. Humanity, fuck yeah. It was crude, but it captured something essential. Humans refused to give up. They refused to accept defeat. They fought with everything they had, not because victory was certain, but because fighting was the right thing to do. The galaxy was about to learn that lesson. The machines were about to face something they could not calculate or predict. They were about to face humanity's greatest weapon, the absolute refusal to quit, even when quitting was the logical choice. 6 hours until battle. 6 hours until they learned if hope was enough to change the universe. The void of space erupted in fire and light as two forces collided. The machine swarm moved in perfect geometric formations. Thousands of massive constructs arranged with mathematical precision. Against them, the combined organic fleet looked chaotic and small, but chaos was the point. "All ships, remember your training," Jiwoo broadcast from his command ship, the Defiant. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically at their stations. Minho coordinated with other vessels while Suman monitored threats. "Do not follow patterns. Do not be predictable. Trust yourselves." The machines opened fire first. Beams of energy cut through space with perfect accuracy, targeting ships based on optimal threat calculations. But the organic fleet did not respond the way the machines expected. Ships broke formation. They scattered. They moved in ways that made no tactical sense. A Sylvanthi cruiser dove toward a machine construct when it should have retreated. At the last moment, it released its entire payload of torpedoes at point-blank range and veered away. The machine tried to calculate the optimal defensive response but ran out of time. It exploded in a brilliant flash. "One down." Kira's voice came over the comm, breathless with excitement and fear. "That was insane. That was wonderful. That was human," Jiwoo replied with a grin. "Keep it up." The battle devolved into beautiful chaos. Alien warriors who had trained their whole lives for ordered combat found themselves improvising, adapting, creating solutions in real time instead of following predetermined plans. It was messy and inefficient and absolutely effective. The machines struggled to respond. Their programming was ancient and powerful, but it relied on predicting enemy behavior. When the enemy refused to be predictable, their advantage crumbled. "Captain, we have a problem," Minho called out. The Defiant took damage to the engine core. "We are losing power." Jiwoo checked his displays. The damage was catastrophic. They were dead in space, drifting. And worse, the machine fleet's command vessel, a construct the size of a small planet, was moving toward their position. "All hands, evacuate," Jiwoo ordered. "Get to the escape pods, move." "What about you, sir?" Suman asked, but she was already helping injured crew members toward the exits. Jiwoo looked at the massive machine approaching. It was the heart of the enemy fleet, coordinating the swarm's movements. Taking it out would cripple the entire force, but it was too well defended for any normal attack to reach it, unless the attack was not normal. "Everyone off the ship." "That is an order." Jiwoo began working the helm controls manually, overriding the damaged automated systems. "I have one last move to make." "Captain, do not do this," Minho grabbed his shoulder. "There has to be another way." "There is not. And you know it." Jiwoo smiled at his friend. "Get to safety. Tell Earth I did my best. Tell the Queen." He paused, then continued quietly. "Tell her that knowing her made me believe in impossible things." Minho's expression was anguished, but he nodded. He knew arguing was useless. He grabbed the remaining crew and dragged them toward the escape pods. Jiwoo was alone on the bridge. The Defiant was dying around him, but he still had thruster control. And he had one working reactor that was currently overloading. He aimed the crippled ship directly at the machine command vessel and fired every remaining thruster. The Defiant limped forward, accelerating slowly. Alarms screamed. The hull groaned. But the ship moved, pointing like an arrow at the heart of the enemy fleet. "Come on, old girl," Jiwoo whispered to his ship. "One more mission. One more impossible thing." The machines detected his approach. They calculated it was not a threat. One damaged ship could not harm their command vessel. They ignored him, focusing on more dangerous targets. That was their mistake. They calculated based on logic. They did not account for a human who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Queen Valara saw what was happening from her flagship. Her command center erupted in panic as officers reported that Jiwoo's ship was on a collision course and he was still aboard. "No," she whispered. Her skin flashed through colors rapidly, white to black to red to gold. Emotions she barely understood flooded through her. Fear, anguish, desperation. "Someone stop him. Send rescue ships. Do something." "Your Majesty, we cannot reach him in time," Lord Thane said. And for once his voice held genuine regret. "The machines will destroy any ship that approaches. Then I will go myself." Valara moved toward the exit. "Your Majesty, you cannot." Her advisors tried to stop her. "You are the Queen. Your life is too valuable. You cannot risk yourself for one human." Valara turned on them with fury in her eyes. "He is not just one human. He is the person who taught me how to feel. The person who showed me what it means to be alive. And I will not let him die alone." She ran. Her advisors chased after her, but she was faster. She reached the hangar bay where her personal ship waited. It was small, fast, designed for ceremonial flights. It was not a combat vessel. It was perfect. As she launched from the hangar, Lord Thane's voice came over her comm. "Your Majesty, please. If you die, the Empire has no heir. Think logically about this." "I have thought logically for 300 years, Lord Thane," Valara replied as she flew toward Jiwoo's dying ship. "It brought me nothing but emptiness. Today I choose to feel. Today, I choose to care about one life more than calculations. Today I choose to be human." She cut the comm and flew faster. Jiwoo saw her coming on his sensors. "No," he said aloud. "No, no, no." Valara turned back. "You cannot be here. I am exactly where I need to be." Her voice filled his bridge. "You taught me about hope, Jiwoo. About fighting for what matters. Did you think I would just watch you die? This is my choice. My sacrifice, then make it our choice. Our sacrifice." Her ship pulled alongside his, matching his trajectory. "I am coming aboard. The ship is falling apart. You will not make it. Watch me." Valara sealed her flight suit and opened her ship's airlock. Space tried to pull her out, but she held on. Her ship bumped against the Defiant's hull and she jumped. The gap was 3 meters. Logic said she could not make it. But she had learned that logic did not account for everything. She flew through the void and grabbed onto the Defiant's hull. Her hands found an access port. She wrenched it open with strength born of desperation and crawled inside. Jiwoo heard the inner airlock open. He turned to see Valara stumbling onto the bridge, her royal robes torn and her crown gone. But she was smiling, actually smiling. "You are insane," he said. "I learned from the best." She moved to stand beside him at the helm. Outside, the machine command vessel loomed larger. They had maybe 2 minutes before impact. "What is the plan?" "Ram them. Overload the reactor. Hope the explosion is big enough to matter. Simple, direct, very human." She placed her hand over his on the controls. "I am honored to face the end with you. I am sorry I dragged you into this. You did not drag me anywhere. I chose to follow. That is what emotions do, right? They make us choose things that logic says are wrong, but our hearts say are right." Jiwoo looked at her. Even now, facing death, she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Not just her appearance, but who she had become. A queen who chose feeling over perfection. A person who chose love over survival. "I love you," he said. The words came out easily, honestly. "I know we have only known each other a short time. I know it is probably too soon to say such things. But we are about to die, so I wanted you to know." Valara's eyes shone with tears. Tears from a Sylvanthi. Impossible tears. "I love you too. I do not fully understand what that means yet. But when I think of you, my chest aches in a way that is painful and wonderful at the same time." "Is that love?" "Yes," Jiwoo laughed through his own tears. "That is exactly what love is." The machine vessel filled their view screen. 30 seconds to impact. The Defiance reactor was screaming, ready to explode with the force of a small star. But then across the battlefield something changed. The other ships of the combined fleet saw what was happening. They saw their captain and their queen making a suicide run. They saw 2 people choosing to sacrifice everything for a chance at victory, and they refused to let them die alone. "All ships, form up on the Defiant." Admiral Taeyang's voice boomed across every comm channel. "We go together. We show these machines what it means to fight with heart." One by one, ships broke from the battle and joined the Defiant's trajectory. Damaged vessels. Healthy vessels. It did not matter. They came because their leaders needed them. They came because that was what family did. "No," Jiwoo and Valara said together, but it was too late. 100 ships, then 200. Then 500 formed an arrow of determination, pointing at the machine command vessel. Each one pushed their reactors beyond safety limits. Each one prepared to die. The machines finally recognized the threat. They tried to stop the incoming fleet. Energy beams lashed out. Missiles launched. But there were too many ships, too much chaos, too much emotion driving them forward. The human in Jiwoo made one last decision. "All ships fire everything at their shields now." Every ship in the formation unleashed their weapons at once. The concentrated fire slammed into the machine vessel's defensive shields, overwhelming them through sheer, stupid determination. "The shields collapsed. Now break off," Jiwoo screamed. "Everyone but the Defiant, break off." He fleet scattered in every direction. Most made it away safely. But the Defiant, with its overloading reactor and 2 people who loved each other, continued forward into the now Jiwoo woke to the sound of medical equipment beeping steadily. His body hurt everywhere, a deep ache that told him he had come very close to death. He tried to move and gasped at the pain. "Do not move yet, Captain." A medical officer appeared above him, humanoid but not human. "You have been in recovery for 3 days. Your injuries were severe." 3 days? Jiwoo's voice was rough. "The battle. Did we win?" "You won. The machine command vessel was destroyed. Without coordination, the remaining machines were defeated within hours. You saved the galaxy, Captain Park." The doctor smiled, though you almost died doing it. "The rescue teams found your escape pod barely functional. How you and Queen Valara survived that explosion I cannot explain." "Valara." Jiwoo tried to sit up despite the pain. "Where is she? Is she alive?" "I am here." He turned his head and saw her. Queen Valara sat in a chair beside his bed looking exhausted but alive. Her skin was a soft golden color, and her eyes were red as if she had been crying. When she saw him wake, she stood and moved to his side. "You are awake," she said, and her voice trembled with emotion. "I was afraid you would not wake." The doctor said the next few hours were critical. "Takes more than a supernova to kill a stubborn human," Jiwoo tried to joke, but his voice broke. "I thought we were dead." "I remember the explosion." "Then nothing." "Your crew installed an experimental emergency transport system without your knowledge," Valara explained. Minho said he did not trust you not to do something heroic and stupid. He was correct. The system activated automatically and sent us to the nearest rescue ship. It barely worked. We almost materialized inside solid matter. Remind me to thank Minho, Jiwoo said, and possibly yell at him for doubting me. He doubted your self-preservation, not your courage. Valara reached out and took his hand. The gesture was natural now, no longer strange or forbidden. The entire fleet is calling you a hero. You are being awarded the Star of Valor, the highest military honor in the Galactic Council. I do not feel like a hero. I feel like someone who got lucky. You are both. She squeezed his hand gently. But more than that, you are the person who changed everything. You changed how the galaxy fights. You changed how we think about emotions and logic. And you changed me. Jiwoo looked at her carefully. She was different from the cold, emotionless queen he had met in the throne room. She smiled more. She showed feelings openly. But there was also a sadness in her eyes. What happened while I was unconscious? He asked. Valara sighed. Lord Thane and the Council of Elders tried to have me removed from the throne. They said I had been corrupted by human emotion. They said I was unfit to rule because I chose feeling over pure logic. What did you do? I challenged them publicly. I stood before the Sylvanthi people and told them everything. I told them about learning to feel, about discovering joy and fear and love. I told them that I had been empty for 300 years and only now did I understand what it meant to truly live. She paused. I gave them a choice. They could keep their perfect emotionless queen who would rule with pure logic, or they could accept a queen who felt things, who made decisions with both her head and her heart. And? Valara smiled. They chose me. Not everyone, of course. Some still believe emotions are weakness. But most of my people were tired of being empty. They wanted to feel again. I gave them permission to be imperfect. So you are still queen? I am still queen. But I am a different kind of queen now. And the Sylvanthi Empire is changing. We are teaching our children about emotions. We are creating art again. Music, poetry. Things we abandoned millions of years ago. She laughed softly. It is chaos. It is messy. It is wonderful. Over the next few weeks, as Jiwoo recovered, he watched the galaxy transform. The victory over the machines had proven that emotions were not weaknesses. Other species began to question their own cultural assumptions. The rigid Xanthi started allowing personal relationships in their military. The logical Korthan began to value individual initiative over group consensus. Humanity, the newcomers who everyone had dismissed as primitive, became teachers. Human officers were requested across the galaxy to help train warriors in creative thinking. Human artists were invited to perform and inspire. Human philosophers gave lectures on the balance between logic and emotion. Humanity, fuck yeah, Minho said one evening as he visited Jiwoo's hospital room. We actually did it. We changed the entire galaxy just by being ourselves. We showed them what they were missing, Jiwoo corrected. They changed themselves. We just gave them permission. Still pretty impressive for the species everyone thought was too emotional to matter. Jiwoo was released from medical care after a month. His first official act was to attend a ceremony at the Galactic Council. He walked into the great chamber where he had first challenged their plans, and this time every being present stood and applauded. Ambassador Yunji stood on the platform, looking proud. Beside her was Admiral Tae Yang, grinning widely, and in the center, on her throne, sat Queen Valara. Captain Jiwoo Park, she announced formally. You are hereby awarded the Star of Valor for extraordinary courage in the face of certain death. You are named a hero of the Galactic Council, and you are granted the title of Ambassador at Large for the Human Federation, with the authority to speak on behalf of your species in all council matters. The chamber erupted in cheers. Species that had never shown public emotion before were shouting with joy. It was messy and chaotic and beautiful. After the ceremony, Valara asked to meet with Jiwoo privately. They walked together through the royal gardens just as they had weeks ago when everything was different. When she was still learning to feel and he was just a captain trying to survive politics. I have a question for you, she said, as they stood beside the same pond where they had first talked. What will you do now? You are a hero. You could return to Earth in glory. You could retire with honors. You could do anything you want. I could, Jiwoo agreed. But I think I want to stay here. There is still work to do. The galaxy is changing, but change is hard. People need help navigating this new way of thinking. And honestly, he turned to face her. I do not want to leave you. Valara's skin shifted to a warm pink color that Jiwoo had learned meant happiness mixed with nervousness. I was hoping you would say that. Because I have a proposal. Stay here as Earth's permanent ambassador to the Sylvanthi throne. Help me guide my people through this transformation. Be my advisor. My friend, your what? Jiwoo prompted gently. My partner, she finished. Not in the formal sense. I know our species are different. I know there are complications. But I want you in my life, Jiwoo. Not as a subject or a servant, but as an equal. Someone who will tell me the truth even when the truth is hard. Someone who will remind me to feel when logic tries to make me cold again. And I want you to remind me to think when emotion tries to make me reckless, Jiwoo replied. He took both her hands in his. Yes, I will stay. I will be your partner in whatever way works for us. We will figure it out as we go. Very human of you, she teased, making plans without knowing how they will work. Very Sylvanthi of you to need reassurance before taking a leap, he countered. They both laughed. It was the sound of two beings from completely different worlds finding common ground in the space between logic and emotion. Months passed. Jiwoo took up residence in the palace, though he insisted on modest quarters instead of the luxury Valara offered. He worked with the Sylvanthi Council, teaching them about human approaches to governance. He helped establish cultural exchange programs between Earth and a dozen other worlds, and every evening he would meet Valara in the gardens. They would talk about their days, about the challenges they faced, about the small victories and frustrations of changing an entire civilization. Sometimes they debated philosophy. Sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence. Sometimes Valara would tell him about a new emotion she had discovered, and he would listen with patience and wonder. She was learning that love was not one feeling but many. There was the excitement of seeing someone you cared about, the comfort of knowing they were near, the pain of watching them hurt, the joy of making them laugh. Each piece was a revelation to her. Jiwoo was learning too. He was learning that logic and emotion were not opposites, but partners. That the best decisions came from balancing both. That being human was not about rejecting logic, but about knowing when to follow your heart instead of just your head. A year after the battle, Jiwoo stood in the throne room with Valara as she addressed her people. The chamber was full of Sylvanthi citizens, many of whom now showed emotions openly on their faces and in their skin colors. It was a rainbow of feelings that would have been impossible before. My people, Valara said, we stand at the beginning of a new age, an age where we honor both our ancient logic and our rediscovered emotions. We are not abandoning what made us strong. We are adding to it. We are becoming complete. She gestured to Jiwoo. This human taught me something important. He taught me that survival is not the same as living. We can calculate optimal outcomes until the stars die, but if we do not feel joy in those outcomes, what is the point?